Okay, so Module 7, we're going to go ahead and hit emerging adulthood and the relation with parents. We just talked about in Module 6 about some of the conflicts in regards to adolescents and their parents, but let's see how that changes over time. So, one of the things to note is that typically relationships between parents and emerging adults improve once the young person leaves home. And then we've seen this a couple of times already. That kind of heart makes the distance makes the heart grow fonder. And so basically, when you're not living with an individual, it's easier to grow closer to them. And that's borne out by this statement right here, where there's fewer negatives regarding their parents and greater closeness when they have moved out. And in the United States, leaving home takes place usually around the age of 18, 19 years old. So most of you who have kind of a traditional college experience would have had that, and you probably were 18 or 19 when that happened. Now, those who had moved at least an hour away by the car from their parents reported a high level of closeness, the highest level, and they valued their parents' opinion most highly. But those who remained home had the poorest relations with their parents in these respects. So once again, that distance makes the heart grow fonder is going to be a theme here. And that's because in our society, it's what we stress, that you want to be autonomous, you want to be independent. So when you have that to a fairly great degree, I mean, if it's an hour away, mom or dad are not going to just pop in and visit you. So there is this kind of sense that you are on your own, but that you can go back and that you still feel close, through calls and stuff like that. Now, the US is not necessarily a homogeneous in this manner. And by that, what I mean is that there are some differences among minorities and majority kind of Americans. So the staying at home tends to be more common among Latinos, Blacks, and Asian Americans compared to white Americans. And that in European countries, emerging adults a lot of times will live with parents longer than in the United States, especially in Southern or Eastern Europe. And that's going to be borne out here by this graph. And as you can see, especially in places like Italy and Spain, which is both is the southern kind of area, and Greece, you can see that men tend to live for a very long time with their parents. And then you look over in the United States, and we're close to the lowest, other than say Denmark. Denmark looks like they kick people out pretty quickly. But beyond that, you can see kind of the differences in countries and the approaches there. So what we experience here in the United States is probably a little quicker than a lot of other places over in Europe. So living at home in the United States, most emerging adults move out of their parents' home in their late teens. That's viewed as kind of a natural thing. But about 30% still stay home, and that's through their early 20s. So, in particular, if you're not going off to college, there's no reason to move out necessarily, unless you're just hell bent on getting your own place and doing what you want to do. But then you usually see the bills associated with it and think, oh, staying at home isn't that bad. So I would imagine those who don't go on to college tend to have that. And some may say, well, I didn't really move out. Well, you did, but you go back every 8 or 9 months after your school's out and stay for the summer or something. As I mentioned earlier, it's much more common among the ethnic minorities in the United States to stay home than it is among white Americans. And about 40% of emerging adults, they return to the nest. In other words, they leave, but then they come back. A lot of times you see this with college students after they graduate, and if they don't already have a job lined up or something, they'll come back home to kind of help save money, get themselves on their feet, and get ready to get established. But that being said, it can be a difficult return because the emerging adults now, they're used to being on their own and having their own place, keeping their own schedule. And then it's moving back and having parents trying to adjust this sense of, do I need to know where you are? Where is there a curfew? And all that other sort of stuff. so that it results in about 2/3 of the emerging adults leaving in less than a year. So if it's moving back home, it's usually on a more temporary nature, just until kind of they can get the job or make the move that they need to make. Now, as emerging adults mature, they begin to feel more adults themselves. That makes sense. And they become more capable of understanding how parents look at things because they are now getting close to the same type of perspective as their parents might have. And for both parents, I mean, adolescents and emerging adults, when we talk about all these relations between children and their parents, autonomy and relatedness are complementary rather than kind of opposing dimensions. So you can be close to your parents and still be autonomous. And we found that out also in the previous module when we were talking about secure attachment, and the ability to have good relatedness, but yet still having really good autonomy and self-reliance in regards to that. So, it's good to like your parents, to be good, securely attached to them, and the odds are you'll probably be more autonomous because of it. Now, this is your typical family that we've been talking about thus far. What we're going to do here in the last few modules for this chapter is look at kind of when things go wrong or when families are not what we would consider the traditional two parents, a child, or more kind of model. And so the first thing that we're going to do is look at the issue of divorce, which of course one of your CIs was on. So in module 8, we're going to be tackling divorce. So stay tuned.